everyone, and today I am in voiceover mode because I have apparently messed up the sound on this one, so here I am with my microphone. We're going to have a go at using these inlays that I made in a recent video. Thought it was about time we did, and also as I've only done the velvet or satin effect once before, I thought I'd have another go, see if I could upscale it on what I did last time. So it's a lovely big tray mould from Moulds and Shapes. And let's see how we get on with this. This is another in my Halloween series, of course. So we are mixing up some resin. The resin I'm using here is Apex One Coat, and the reason I've gone for one coat is it's very fast curing, and what I want to do is get several layers on the go without having to take several days to make this tray. So the first thing to do is to, well, first of all, I had to make sure the tray was clean because this tray has been so used and abused. This poor little mould, it's had a tough life. I have used and used and used it. So here we go, we're going to get some resin in there. I'm mixing in some glitter with the resin. It's called Phantom. It's a lovely black glitter from Jam Pot Glitter. And you'll see as we go along, it's really holographic as well. There we go, look at that, isn't that lovely? And I've put some black, just some black pigment paste in with the resin as well. Now that's going to go around the rim, around the edge of the mould. Now those edges are devils for getting bubbles trapped in them. You know what they're like on all trays, and I have, as usual, stirred far too fast. As you can see, there's bubbles in that resin there, although this resin does degas really, really well. It's just, I'm always going to get bubbles trapped around those edges. So I'll show you what we do about that in a moment. So this is the very old tray mould that I used previously doing this, and that's that lip where you get bubbles stuck on that one. So as you can see, this one from Moulds and Shapes is quite a lot bigger. Now we're just getting that resin in round that edge, going nice and evenly all the way around. And I am going to let that cure up so that when I put in the next layer of resin, it won't disturb this one too much. Hopefully it will just stay in that groove, just giving me that nice neat lip around the mould. There we go, looks like I messed up there a bit. As the whole backing to this is going to be very dark anyway, any bits where I messed up, you're not really going to see them, so I didn't panic too much about it. This mould is more than overdue a very good clean anyway, by the look of it. So there we are. You see there's still all glitter stuck around the edges of it from last time I used it. Anyway, here we go. So we're going to now address those bubbles around the edges. Now I'm going to use here a micro brush. So this is a little tip for all of you. If you use things like toothpicks or, you know, the plastic stirrers that I use or anything like that, there's a danger you're going to scratch the mould. So what I use is these fine tipped swabs or micro brushes. Those are great, and you can buy both of those in great big packs from Amazon. I'll put you the links for the swabs down below because I've only recently discovered those, and they're very, very fine. They're smaller tipped than the micro brushes, so you can get into little nooks and crannies a bit easier. So really just filling up this rim now to make sure it's pretty much up to the edge. That's it. We're just going to leave this to cure now. Okay, we're on a couple of hours and that has pretty much cured up. So we're going to be starting to turn our attention towards the silicone inlays now. Now there's a couple of ways, well, to be fair, there's a lot of ways you can use silicone inlays. If you want to see absolute chapter and verse on silicone inlays, probably the recognised expert I would say would be Wendy from Toonpish Crafts, because she makes and sells the most beautiful inlays. I've got loads of hers. I'll put you a link to her channel down in the video description below. Now the main thing to know about silicone inlays is they stick to stuff and they float. Really, that's a good summary, I think. So what you can do with them is actually stick them onto your actual mould, and then you will get an image that's kind of reflected back in the top of the mould, like a recess. But what I'm actually going to do with these today is do what is probably the more popular method, and that is floating them on the back of the resin. So first of all, what we're going to do is take our little brush, it's just a little eyeshadow brush, and we're going to paint in all over the backs of these little inlays with some chameleon powder. The chameleon powder I'm using is one from Nick Pro. I'm not sure what the colour is called, but it looks white in the pot, and then you brush it on and it turns out to be pink. It's rather lovely. So as you can see, I've sped this up for you because it is rather repetitive, but a little tip for you is to paint your powders on a bit of paper, because of course then you can shake the surplus back into the pot afterwards. Now if you do that on your silicone mat, the powder will just stick to your silicone mat. So a bit of paper is your answer. So here we go. Next thing to do is get some resin in here. So we're just going to tip in some clear resin. And the resin I'm using at this point, because I had run out of the Quick Cure one coat one. So this is just Apex High Gloss, which did mean I needed to wait for it longer to cure. But not a problem. It's wonderful, wonderful resin. And you can see it's all degassing itself as we watch, which is great. So we're just going to leave that to settle a little bit, and then we're just popping in these inlays onto the back. Now what I did do is I shook off the surplus of the powder, just flapped it about a bit basically, and then I carefully laid them into the little tray on the back, as you can see, like this, face down, and I still managed to get some of the chameleon powder go walkabouts. Oh yeah, and I dropped that one in upside down, which didn't help. You didn't see that, did you? No, I could have edited that out, couldn't I? I didn't know. Anyway, yes. So these will they will float around a little bit. Some of the powder will come off and they will move around. The other alternative, of course, is you could actually put these in without putting the powder on the little inlays first, and then brush your powder into the cavity when you take the inlays out. That would be a way of making sure that the powder did stay just within the cavity. You could certainly do that. But I like doing it this way, it's fun. So we're just going to put all the rest of these in here. And then it's going to be a case of waiting. Now this resin is like I said, it's a more regular resin. It'll take a good few hours to cure. And you do need it to be pretty much 100% cured before you can take your inlays out. As you can see, I've got this layer on the bottom, very thin layer of resin. In fact, it's actually pulling away from the mould. It's so thin in places, because I did want to allow room for the rest of the resin. We've got more layers to go, haven't we? We've got to do a velvety layer and then a backing layer. So I was trying not to put too much resin in the mould in the first place. However, these are really chunky little inlays. So I did end up topping up the resin a little bit more over what you see here. So that, so that they wouldn't stick up too much from it and mess up our next layer. All right then, now that has cured. So I think this is about the next morning actually. And I was crossing my fingers that they'd come out okay, because I had managed to get resin on the back of them. I was being a bit of a Burke and I splashed the resin around a bit too much when I was putting that extra little top up in. But no, they just came out absolutely fine. I was really pleased. Just going to peel all these away, and you can see how it's left the colour in the recess. It's like magic, isn't it? And that will not come off. If you rub your hands on that now, if you rub your fingers on the back of that skull or whatever, that powder will not come off. It's actually sort of infused itself into that top surface of the resin. So that's all of them out now. And of course the next job will be to put some black in the back of those. Now we all know probably that if you put black behind chameleon powders or ethereal powders, all those different sorts of shimmery coloured effects, you get a better colour pop. So whilst this is very pretty and pastel-y pinky at the moment, you'll barely see it. It'll just look quite faint and shimmery, I suppose is the way to put it, if you just put clear behind it. Or if you put white behind it, you'll get a different effect again, and so on. Black is the traditional thing to put behind it, because you then get this really intense effect. Really makes the colours pop. So all I'm doing here is putting in some black pigment, and it is the jet black pigment from Just For You Online that I use. It's a pigment paste, so incredibly pigmented. You only need a tiny bit of the pigment to actually make this really dark and black. Now we're just going to pour this into the back of all of these little shapes, but as you can see, just going to give it a good stir up first, make sure the colour's gone all the way through it, and then we will pour it in. So just very carefully, I'm squishing my little pot, so I've got a little point. We're going to start pouring it in, and it's just as simple as this. We're just going to fill them all up. Funny. And I do make a bit of a mess of this, but of course, because the resin around it's cured, you can just wipe it off if you spill any anywhere. Just point I had got some more Apex 1 coat to hand, so you can see this resin is quite thick as well, so it isn't going to take too long for it to cure. It doesn't need to be absolutely 100% cured, but pretty much really, I suppose. It needs to be like the lip around the bowl was, around the edges of the tray there. It needs to be so that it isn't going to spread, it isn't going to flow around and move when you put your next layer of resin in. So yeah, 90% cured, let's say. So there we go. As you can see, again, I spilt some in places it shouldn't go, and it sort of overflowed a bit here and there. Just a bit of a tidying up job, and then we wait for it to cure. So we're on about 3 hours here. So that has cured completely by this point, because it is that fast cure resin. And here we go. We're just putting some clear in on the back. Now this wants to be a thin layer because we're working with a shallow tray here, aren't we? But it still needs to be deep enough for the saran wrap or cling film, whatever you call it in your country, to work, and you'll see why in a moment. Okay, here comes the fun bit. Now at this point I decided not to use cling film or saran wrap, but instead to follow the suggestions that popped up in my comments below my previous video on this technique. People said, why not use something more like a plastic bag? So this is actually 2 layers of plastic bag, because I didn't bother cutting it in half. I thought it would be a bit cleaner for me doing this squidging, you see, so there's the 2 layers there. So yeah, that people were saying that it's easier to remove afterwards if it's sort of like a slightly thicker plastic. So I thought, well, we'll give that a go, and I've got this plastic bag, so yeah. So we're just squidging it. Now the resin will stay in all those little crinkles and creases, and that is how we get our velvety or satiny or whatever you want to call it effect. You can see the layer underneath is really nice and crinkled. So now it's just a waiting game. Wait for this to cure up and see what we've got. So I kind of forgot to press record at that point, but what I've done here is I've actually already pulled off the plastic. That's the bit I didn't film. And honestly, I didn't find that plastic any better to pick off. There's still bits coming off there now. I was still peeling bits off. It just shredded. So I need to try an even thicker plastic next time, I think. But all I've done here is I've taken some mica powder, and it's the one called Merlot from Let's Resin, and I've just brushed it all over the back, and that's how we've got what you see there. Now it doesn't look that velvety, does it? You can see it's nice and crinkled. There we go, that's the one that I was using. So yeah, it's nice and crinkly, but it doesn't look very special, does it, at the moment? But of course the real magic comes when you put the black backing on it. So we're just going to mix up some black resin now and get that done. So yeah, there we go, black resin again. It is, which one was I using here? I think this was the normal Apex High Gloss, the regular one that I use. So this was going to take a little while to cure, and in fact it did. I left it overnight. And again, it's just got that black pigment in it, and we're just pouring it on. Then it's just a case of leaving it overnight to cure. Demold time, and now this is where it started to get a bit messy. I ended up with this terribly messy back and edges. And that is because the crinkles of the plastic had pushed out the resin around the edges of the tray. So look, you can see I've got like a frilly edge to it. And I thought, well, that's no problem, because I can run my deburring tool or something around that, or a knife or scissors or whatever. I can get that off. But the back itself, some of the crinkles had actually stood up so much that it was sticking out the back of the blimmin' resin. So we've got a hell of a thing to sort out. I don't know if you can see that there. Yeah, I'll show you in a moment. Yeah, look, can you see there's all lumps and bumps on the back of that mould? As well as those edges. So what I then did was I sanded them down. I got a nail file. I went all around the edges and cleaned that up. Deburring tool first. And then I sanded them down, and then we put a bit of black resin on the back again. I domed it off, sort of thing. I'll show you how I do that in a moment. But look at the front. The glitter sank as I hoped it would, but we've still got the black in the rim, and we've got that lovely 3D effect on the actual skull and everything. Now, this was the first step of getting those edges off. I just went around it with some scissors and fine-tuned it with a nail file. Right, I'll show you what I do about that mess on the back. So this seemed pretty simple to me. I sanded them down a bit flat first. You see the edges I've got sorted. that was nothing that a nail file wouldn't fix. But these raised bits here, I had to sand those down. Again, I attacked them with a nail file. I could have sanded them down even lower, I suppose. We could have got a proper sander on it, but that I thought would do. Now, resin tape. I suppose you could use masking tape or all sorts really, but I chose to put some resin tape around the edges to create like a dam so that we could then basically just fill it up with resin. There, like so. And I just worked my way around. Oops, eventually, oh, and it sticks to it, so it's very sticky stuff. This is the extra wide one from Let's Resin, and it's wonderful stuff. So you just pull it nice and tight and make sure it's stuck firmly all the way around. So simple as that, really. And then once I got it all the way around, made sure it was really thoroughly sealed, and then really all we're going to do now is just pour some resin in. And then it's just a case of waiting for it to cure. And for the next clip, we will be back to my voice recording on the day. Here we are then, just pulling the tape off. I've now got a lip instead, but that is a lip that we can clean up. It's just a normal resin lip. So I'll be sanding that off. Gonna let it sit for a bit, probably run around it with the deburring tool actually. But we've now got a shiny bottom. I had a bit of a moisture in the air in here, I think. So I've ended up with a bit of that, is it amine? Is that how they say it? Blush? But that doesn't matter. So what I can do, rather than worry about sticking cork on it, I can go like this. These are little rubber bumper stickers. Probably could have done with finding my bigger ones, to be honest. But these will do. You can put one in each corner. If you want to be a little bit particular, you could put one or two in the middle as well. You might just put one in the middle, not that it's going to need it. But that'll protect people's tabletops and so on. So there we are, we're finished. Like I said, I'll just go around the edge with my deburring tool, and that's now a smooth and quite presentable back. Part of me is tempted to go around here with a silver pen or a gold pen or something, but I think it's enough. That'll make it a bit too pretty. I wanted more sinister. And it's nice and 3D look. Ooh. Spooky. I'll see you for the next one, folks. If you'd like to like this video and like to give me a thumbs up, that would be absolutely awesome. I would really appreciate it. And of course, thank you to those who choose to subscribe. I'll see you for the next one. Bye.